Welcome to Trench Tactics, my series where I aim to provide a breakdown of factions, sub-factions and strategies for the game of Trench Crusade. Today we are looking at every Heretic Legion model and how to field them. This uses the statistics of models within Online Rules Release 1.0.0 and considers the latest errata. The Heretic Legion as a faction has no specific gimmick, but it has access to a powerful armory and a strong roster. They can take equipment like grenade launchers, heavy flamethrowers, and even the coveted anti-materiel rifle, if they are willing to pay the extra 3 glory to do so. A heavy weapon that boasts the ability to ignore armor, and has +1 dice to injure, along with the critical keyword. Their roster includes some of the most feared individual models in the game, to the extent that they've been slightly nerfed in the new update, and are still very powerful. I'll also be commenting on one of their unique weapons very quickly, the Sacrificial Blades. They are some of the best melee weapons in the game, serving as a more powerful one-handed version of the double-handed blunt weapon, boasting a +2 modifier to injury rolls. The only reason this weapon isn't all over our builds is because they are limited to 2. Starting off our roster is the Heretic Priest. 80 ducats, I think I'm pronouncing that right now, 6 inches of movement and +2 dice in both melee and ranged. He has the keyword Tough, Elite and Leader. The important ones to know are that Leader means as long as he is on the field and not downed, you roll morale checks with +1 dice, while Tough means that the first time he is taken out of action, he is downed instead. He has the ability Puppet Master, which gives him the option to take a risky action roll, which on success allows him to choose a model within 12 inches that he can see and move them 1d6 inches. This is very strong, as you can force enemies to move out of combat, subjecting them to melee attacks from himself or other strong melee threats on your roster. The Heretic Priest has a solid combat stat line, and you must take him in the Heretic Legion core warband. Puppet Master is his defining feature, and as a risky action should be used last on his turn, with the goal being to generate free melee attacks or push allies to objectives where d6 inches can make the difference. As for his builds, I have 2 variants on the most commonly seen battle kits. First is Gaslight Knife Crime, 138 ducats, equipping him with a gas grenade, sacrificial blade, standard armor and trench shield. Gas grenades have 8 inches of range, the assault keyword, blast, ignore armor, ignore cover, ignore long range and -1 dice to injure. Most importantly here is the assault keyword, which means you can use the weapon and still charge, while the gas keyword inflicts additional blood markers. The Sacrificial Knife, as mentioned before, is a powerful risky melee weapon with a +2 modifier to injuries. Combining the standard armor and shield gives him a respectable -2 armor. This build is intended to be effective and affordable, which is why reinforced armor isn't taken. The plan for playing him with this build is to throw a gas grenade before charging in for the kill with the Sacrificial Knife and making use of the inflicted blood markers. If they live, the Puppet Master ability can give the potential of extra attacks. The build has a lot of variances, but if you shell out for the reinforced armor, you either keep the shield and benefit from the -3, or change out to a trench club for the extra offhand attack. The main alternative build is the Puppet Master, costing 163 ducats and 2 glory. Take gas grenades, sacrificial blade, reinforced armor, the blasphemous staff, and a combat helmet. The blasphemous staff is a melee weapon that gives +1 dice to action rolls other than dashes and attacks, and has the fire keyword, meaning it inflicts an extra blood marker. With this extra dice applying to Puppet Master, your chance of success from the roll will go from 58% to 80%, making it overall much more consistent. The best use for Puppet Master is to give the Warwolf, a monster who we'll discuss later, the chance of getting off extra attacks, but it can also be used for things like getting ranged allies to elevated positions without the need for a risky climb action. Your order of action for the assault combo will be gas grenade, charge, blasphemous staff swing, sacrificial blade swing. You'll likely have 4 blood markers on the target by the time you get to the blade, which you can spend to give yourself a very good chance of taking the target out of action. Using the Sacrificial Blade as your offhand weapon is only a little bit risky, as the difference between a +1 and a +2 to hit is not actually all that much. Overall, the chance to benefit from the additional 2 blood markers from the fire keyword on the blasphemous staff is well worth the difference. Our next elite is the Chorister, 6 inches of movement, +2 dice to melee and -2 dice to range. The keyword to note here is Fear, meaning enemy models in melee have -1 dice to hit him, while giving him fear immunity. His ability is Unholy Hymns, which gives -1 dice to success rolls taken by enemy models within 8 inches. This essentially means -1 dice to everything that isn't an injury roll. This can be debilitating for certain models. The Chorister is a very disruptive melee threat that is useful at denying enemy models dashes and ability activations that require action rolls. The ability also stacks with fear, giving non-negating models -2 dice to hit him in melee. On the flip side, he is a slow target that lacks the tough keyword and can't shoot to save his life, so must be played carefully when crossing the board. When it comes to builds, the Chorister generally needs to cost at least 113 ducats, taking a sacrificial blade, standard armor and a trench shield. Due to his melee speciality, the sack blade is a must-have. He will need at least -2 armor to get into melee and must be aware of fire corridors, minimizing exposure as he makes his way to the frontline objectives to perform at his fullest. Optional equipment includes the upgrade to reinforced armor for better protection, and a combat helmet or infernal brand mark to negate common keywords like shrapnel and fire. Lastly, some consider a flamethrower a viable option for the Chorister, as it doesn't need to roll to hit, but the lack of the assault keyword makes it an expensive weapon that is unlikely to get much value across the course of a game. The final elite on the roster is the Death Commando. 90 ducat space, 6 inches of movement with +2 dice in melee and +1 dice at range. The important keyword on this one is Infiltrator, which means that after deployment the commando can be deployed anywhere 8 inches away from enemy models, out of their line of sight, allowing it to deploy towards objectives or with the intention of hunting specific targets. Its choices for battle kit are a little restricted for range, limited to gas grenades, Tormentor chains, which are a glory item, and silenced pistols. Their key abilities are twofold, starting with Stealth Generator, which causes incoming ranged attacks to have -1 dice to hit. The second part is their ability to hide, allowing them to take a risky action with +1 dice to become untargetable for ranged attacks or charges. This effect ends if the commando moves, attacks, or an enemy model comes within 1.5 inches. Lastly, you can only attempt this action if the commando is in contact with a terrain piece at least half an inch tall. Combining all of this, the commando shapes up to be a slippery melee threat with a decent stat line for assault combos. It's important to note that Infiltrator is a very valuable keyword for it to have, however the hide action has been indirectly nerfed. As well, it has always been vulnerable to point target weapons. The blast keyword now means that even basic grenades can be thrown at its feet while hidden. While not crippling, it's certainly something to be aware of. When it comes to builds, you generally equip your commando to hunt either troops or elites. For troops, you give them gas grenades, Tartarus claws, reinforced armor, and a combat helmet. The Tartarus claws are unique to Death Commandos, and are a paired weapon, meaning they take up both hands and can attack twice, and also ignore the offhand penalty. They have the critical keyword, and if they manage to down or out of action another target, the commando can move up to 3 inches. If this move gets them into contact with another model, they can attack again, although this cannot be repeated past this point. Between this and gas grenades, they can be very effective at killing low armor targets. Across both builds, the combat helmet is important to reduce the impact grenades will have on them by negating shrapnel. The elite killer takes a very similar loadout, but switches the claws for a sacrificial knife and trench shield. Very similar, but is built more with the aim of dealing with tougher targets, getting close with infiltrate and hide, placing blood with the gas grenades, then aiming for the kill with a blood marker fueled sacrificial blade strike. Now the humble Heretic Trooper, an affordable 30 ducats for a basic 6-inch movement with no bonuses or negatives. When building your list, however, you can upgrade the Heretic Trooper to Heretic Legionnaires for 10 ducats. This increases either their melee or ranged profile by 1 dice, chosen by you. The restriction on this is that Legionnaires cannot outnumber Troopers, so if you have 5 Troopers for example, you can only have 2 Legionnaires. The Trooper is a basic but flexible foot soldier that can fill out your ranks and won't complain about being cheaply equipped. When it comes to their builds, I'll highlight 3 somewhat common loadouts. The Rifleman sees the Trooper take a bolt-action rifle and optionally a bayonet. The rifle has a respectable 24-inch range, while the bayonet enables melee combat. Note that in the most recent rules update, fighting unarmed is no longer an option, so items like bayonets, clubs, and pistols have improved value. The Rifleman is cheap and will likely serve to hold mid-ground objectives and shoot from range to set up and support your other models. Upgrading to a Legionnaire is a luxury choice, but will make them much more effective at that long range. The Shotgunner build costs either the same or 10 more if you choose to take the Trench Shield, benefiting from the cheapest source of armor and taking advantage of the shield lug shotgun. The shotgun has 12-inch range, plus 1 dice to hit, but -1 dice to injure if at long range. It is a more aggressive setup than the Rifleman, intended to play alongside frontline models and push mid to far field objectives. Finally, The instrument carrier is a pricier 67 ducat cost. They take a pistol and an instrument. The pistol is a 12-inch range weapon, and the main purpose to be taken is that it can also be used in melee with the melee skill, which is the same for a basic trooper as it is for ranged. The instrument offers allies within 4 inches, plus 1 dice to dash, which is most useful for models like the Heretic Priest and Chorister, who want to get up the board quickly. If you're watching this video and planning your own Heretic Legion warband, or any other kind of warband for that matter, then you should consider getting yourself a Trench deck. Trench decks are an awesome solo project that I want to promote, which are high quality reference cards for Trench Crusade models and factions. They are printed in high quality on sleevable poker-sized cards and contain accurate and up-to-date information for the new full rules release, helping make sure you don't forget or slip up on those new changes. They're designed to be written on, so you can even use them to track your battle kit and advancements across campaigns. I highly encourage you to check them out and consider getting some for yourselves. Link in the description down below. Now we come to one of the most feared models in the game, especially for newer players, the Warwolf Assault Beast. A pricey 145 ducats, but boasting 8 inches of movement, plus 2 dice to melee, and minus 3 armor inbuilt. He comes with the keywords Fear, Tough and Artificial, 2 of which I've gone over, leaving Artificial. It is a strange keyword that occasionally grants niche restrictions and immunities, so don't worry about it, but do be aware of it. The wolf is very restricted in battle kit, unable to change its gear in any way, shape or form, but comes preloaded with unique weaponry. The inbuilt armor is also valued at around 50 ducats, helping justify the high base cost. As an ability, it has Loping Dash, giving it plus 1 dice to dash actions, a huge buff to the chance of success, and allowing it to ignore difficult terrain, which is massive, depending on what kind of board you play on. The Warwolf is a terrifying melee monster, with high movement making it the fastest thing available to Heretic Legions. While we can't exactly build him, we do have a lot to go over in terms of what his weapons actually do. Firstly, Chainsaw Mouth. The weapon has plus 1 dice to hit, plus 1 dice to injure, ignores armor and is risky. You must always attack with this weapon first if you want to use the claws, and it hits 98% of the time if rolling with the usual 5d6. Ignoring armor is huge for this weapon. With plus 1 dice to injure, without using any other blood markers, you have a 50% chance to out of action anything the wolf goes after. Very scary. He also boasts Shredding Claws, a follow-up offhand attack with plus 1 dice to injure, and risky again. You've still got an 80% chance to hit though, and since the Chainsaw Mouth will often down the target, you'll often benefit from the plus 1 dice to injure, that'll total plus 2 dice to injure, which is nothing to scoff at even though this attack won't ignore armor like the Chainsaw Mouth does. When using the wolf, be aware of his strengths and weaknesses. He can challenge major threats like the Brazen Bulls and Anchorite Shrines, but shouldn't until you've put blood on them with things like rifle infantry or artillery witches. With a priest nearby, Puppet Master can allow for extra Chainsaw Mouth attacks, which can be the difference between winning and losing in a kaiju battle. Aside from facing big threats, the wolf can run down ranged targets like mechanized heavy infantry and alchemists, as once you're caught by the Warwolf, escape is almost impossible. With a big jump in threat value, we move from the Warwolf to the Wretched. 6 inches movement, minus 1 dice in both melee and ranged. The Wretched cannot take any battle kit costing more than 10 ducats, but must be given at least 1 weapon, something to do with the Geneva Convention. With their ability Chattel, they can be sold for full price, though their gear still sells for half. They also benefit from Dark Blessing, which means if they are taken out, a blessing marker is given to the closest friendly elite. Blessing markers are very good, as they can give plus 1 dice to any action, or give an incoming injury minus 1 dice. The Wretched are statistically weak, but the cheapest thing on the menu. They can contest objectives and fill out lists, and when they die, the blessing marker almost always comes in handy. Also worth noting, they are subject to the Law of Hell, meaning if they do manage to kill an elite model, they are taken off your roster and removed from the game, but when doing so, don't affect morale. Here are 2 common builds for Wretched in 1.0.0, the first being just a knife, for 26 ducats total. You bring the knife, which enables melee, but gives negative 1 dice to hit, totaling negative 2 thanks to their impressive base stat line. It is the cheapest build possible, and their job will be to run up the board, get in the way of enemy charges, and perish to give blessing markers to your elites. Alternatively, they can now be given ranged weapons, so a shotgun is not a terrible option for the Wretched. 35 ducats total, the shotgun's plus 1 to hit helps bring them up to a 0 dice to hit total at close range. This makes them more likely to inflict blood than the knife build, but more expensive. With the same game plan as the Knife Wretch, your opponent can less reliably ignore a Shotgun Wretched. Next, the Anointed Heavy Infantry. 95 ducat space, 6 inches movement, and +1 dice to both melee and range, -2 armor inbuilt. They also actually have Infernal Brand inbuilt, giving them negate fire, which along with the armor is worth around 45 ducats. They have the strong keyword, meaning they ignore heavy and can wield a single two-handed melee weapon one-handed. The Anointed is actually the only model in standard Heretic Legion with this keyword. They are powerful weapon carriers with rounded stat lines, and you can take up to 5 of them in a list. Due to how versatile they have a lot of build options, but here are some popular picks. I would absolutely put the anti-materiel rifle here, but as it is a glory item, I'd much rather focus on ducat builds. Firstly, the Heavy Flamer. 157 ducats total to give him a heavy flamethrower and polearm. The Heavy Flamer has 10 inches of range, auto hits, has the automatic 2 keyword, ignores armor, and has the fire keyword and -1 dice to injure. That's a lot of effects, but the automatic 2 keyword means that you can hit the same target twice, or 2 different targets within 6 inches of each other. If you hit the same target twice, which you probably will, you're putting about 4 blood markers on them thanks to the fire keyword and ignore armor. The polearm is on him to enable melee, but also to give enemy models a -1 dice to hit if they decide to charge him to try and shut off that flamethrower. Next, the Grenade Launcher. 132 ducats to build it, taking the launcher alongside a polearm. The Grenade Launcher has 36 inches range, 3-inch blast, ignores cover, and has the shrapnel keyword for +1 blood inflicted. It is a long-range weapon, effective at hitting groups of enemies across the board, taking out low armor targets and stacking blood on the higher ones. Lastly, the Melee Threat. 119 ducats, equipping him with gas grenades, a double-handed blunt weapon, and a sword or axe. The double-handed blunt weapon has a +1 modifier to injury rolls, which outperforms greatswords and hellblades against targets that already have blood markers, which your target most likely will due to the gas grenade assault combo. The main weakness of this build is the lack of speed, so if you pair the melee threat with an instrument carrier, it is likely to perform much better. Finally, we come to potentially the most famous model in Trench Crusade, the Artillery Witch. She is 100 ducats to field and has 6 inches of movement, -1 dice in melee, and +0 dice to range. She has the ability to negate fear and gas, and comes inbuilt with infernal bombs, which we will talk about soon. She also cannot be equipped with other ranged weapons or grenades. With the ability Abiotic Life, gas keywords have -1 dice to injure the witch. She also gets Levitate, allowing her to move up and down without jumping or climbing, and is immune to injury caused by falling. The Artillery Witch is a deadly long-range threat. The Infernal Bomb is an incredible weapon, so she is probably going to be a high priority target and must be played carefully. You can only bring 1 on your force, but if the match is at 1000 ducats or more, you can bring 2. For her build, the general loadout is to put standard armor and a trench shield on her for 125 ducats total. She is a priority target for enemies and cannot get back to cover after shooting due to reload, so -2 armor is absolutely necessary as the best we can get for her. Remaining aware of firing lines and enemy range is key to making her survive. I'll break down the Infernal Bomb here since it's a pretty complicated weapon at first glance. It has 36 inches of range, 3-inch blast, ignores cover, ignores long range, and ignores elevated positions. It also has reload, scatter, and shrapnel. Ignore elevated positions means you cannot benefit from putting your witch up high, while reload means your turn ends after firing the weapon. Scatter means if you miss your attack, it still goes off, but misses by a number of inches equal to how much you missed 7 by, and your opponent decides where it lands. This means a roll of 5 will be off target by 2 inches. However, if you do miss by something like 2 inches, the 3-inch blast means you will at least still catch the target in the radius. The weapon has its own set of unique modifiers, including Duck, which means you get -1 dice to injure if a piece of terrain is between the target point and the model. Infernal Strike is what makes the Infernal Bomb so scary. In the case that you do hit a model directly on its base, you roll 3d6 to injure and take the sum, meaning it acts just like a bloodbath. Lastly, the Mighty Explosion trait means that if a model is hit by the bomb, it is sent d3 inches away from the target point, or directly away from the witch if it hit the target. Remember, your opponent picks where the bomb lands if you miss the success roll, so fire with that in mind. Your witch only hits directly around 58% of the time, but when it does, it will hurt. For our example list, I've gone with 800 ducats and 6 glory, as that will be the new standard game size. You guys actually narrowly voted to see 700 ducat lists in future videos, so I will keep that in mind going forward. This list is built with hybrid threat in mind, offering dangers for the opponent to deal with at close and long ranges. You have armor-piercing solutions at both ranges as well, boasting an anti-material rifle that can prioritize threats like anchorite shrines, while the Warwolf can follow up and finish off these major threats. The Heretic Priest and Chorister also march up the board, standing as majorly disruptive threats in their own right. We also bring foot soldiers in the form of Heretic Troopers and a shotgun Wretched, who should push up towards objectives while aiming to put blood markers onto bigger threats as setup, while holding those objectives to free up your important models. That's all for this video. Thank you so much for watching. And thank you so much to my first channel members, Jack Pembroke, Christian Westerland, and Kafisk Samlaw. It feels genuinely surreal to me that I'm receiving this support, and it means so much. Anyway, if you enjoyed, like and share the video, leave a comment telling me what you want to see next, subscribe if you want to stick around, and become a channel member if you want to honour me with that support, and in return you'll get your name in the credits, and soon get to vote on what faction or sub-faction gets covered next. This has been Trench Tactics, and I'll see you around.